Myeong Yu thought she could do anything if she set her mind to it. That was what she believed as she cleaned the house. She was always full of inspiration, always thinking the world moved around her. But this time, she was scrubbing a toilet. When she pressed the flush, a sigh of relief escaped her. Her work was finally done. She sent a message to her client, who told her where the money was kept. She went to the spot and picked it up. It was a surprising amount, 200,000 won, far more than she had worked for. She felt grateful, but at the same time, a thought struck her. People like her survived on the excess of people she called special. As she walked home, her thoughts weighed heavy. The older she grew, the more unnoticed she became. She wasn't talented, not really. All she could do was hope that luck would someday find her. Her eyes lifted to a billboard at the side of the road. It was Yena Ban, glowing and photogenic. She looked away quickly. She told herself it was fine, that there was still time, but the truth pressed down on her. This was hell. Her name was Myeong Yu, 29 years old, an unknown actress who cleaned houses on the side. And the irony was cruel. Her name meant fame. After a long day of work, she reached home carrying a warm pack of steamy bungjipang, planning to share it with her boyfriend. She pressed the buttons to unlock the door, expecting the familiar comfort of returning to him, but was met with a shocking sight. The door swung open to reveal Yena Ban, standing there with a bright, smiling face. Annoyance immediately flared inside her as she demanded to know what Yena was doing there. Yena Ban calmly explained that Assistant Director Woo, Myeong's boyfriend, had asked her to come over personally to discuss something about the movie. She insisted that Myeong should not misinterpret the visit. Myeong only scoffed, questioning if that was the reason Yena had come to her home when she herself was not around. Yena pouted slightly, urging Myeong to understand. She reminded her that the movie was just as important to her boyfriend as it was to her. The tension hung thick in the air as Myeong's frustration mixed with a reluctant acknowledgement of the situation. Yena Ban was her junior colleague, 2 years younger than her, and the one who had first approached Myeong Yu, calling her Sunbae. It started with something small. Yena had once said that Myeong's perfume smelled nice, even though Myeong hadn't worn any that day. From that simple moment, their closeness began to grow little by little. A year later, things changed. Yena was cast in a big movie by a well-known director, and her performance won her the award for Best New Actress of the Year. That night, Myeong Yu sat at home with her boyfriend, watching Yena appear on the television screen. Both of them felt genuine happiness for her, smiling as they saw her success being celebrated. On a particular day, Yena Ban and Myeong Yu went out together to a restaurant. The moment they were seated inside, Myeong Yu looked around with wide eyes, amazed by how fancy and expensive the place looked. But Yena, with her usual calm smile, brushed it off as if it were nothing. Then, with a smug look that Myeong Yu had never seen on her face before, she asked if she could call her Myeong. Surprised by the sudden boldness, Myeong Yu hesitated for a moment, but eventually agreed. A few days later, everything changed. Myeong Yu's boyfriend told her that Yena had been chosen as the lead in Muse. Shocked, Myeong Yu reminded him that the role was supposed to be hers. But he only explained that the casting had already been decided and that his small film studio should feel lucky to work with someone as promising as Yena Ban. Myeong's voice trembled as she asked if that meant she was completely out. His answer cut deep. He told her that the role had never been hers to begin with, and that the final decision rested with the director. The weight of those words broke her. Tears filled her eyes as she sobbed, saying that she truly wanted the role and that it was unfair to her. Her boyfriend moved closer, gently placing his hands on her shoulders, trying to comfort her. But her tears only grew heavier. Finally, he wrapped his arms around her, holding her in his embrace. He admitted that he shouldn't have told her in such a blunt way, and quietly reminded her that there would be more opportunities ahead. Back in the present, as Myeong Yu stood in her home, she felt uneasy the moment she saw Yena there. Even while Yena spoke with her usual smile, something inside Myeong twisted. Without hesitation, she told Yena to leave. Yena froze at the blunt words, her eyes wide with surprise. She asked softly if Myeong was angry, but Myeong, with the same firm expression, warned her never to come to her house when she wasn't around, or else she might get the wrong idea. Yena had no response. Her face trembled, her eyes filled with tears, and before long she burst into crying. Unable to hold it in, she ran out of the house in a hurry. Myeong closed the door behind her, but almost immediately her boyfriend rushed toward the door, calling out Yena's name. His voice was sharp as he turned on Myeong, shouting if she even understood what she had just done. He reminded her that he and Yena had an important shoot the very next day, and in his anger, he called Yena his actor. Those words pierced her. His actor. They echoed painfully in her chest. He was about to leave when Myeong's voice stopped him. With sadness in her eyes, she asked if he even cared about how she felt. She was his girlfriend. Couldn't he have at least told her that Yena was coming to their home? He sighed deeply, turning back to face her. He told her firmly that he hadn't cheated, and he didn't understand why she was worrying over something so small. He reminded her not to mix their personal lives with work, and not to take out her frustration on another girl who was simply doing her best, just because her own career wasn't working out. Then, without another word, he walked out. Left behind, Myeong's hand tightened around her phone as she stared at the picture of them together on the screen. All she had wanted was a little courtesy, both as his girlfriend and as an actress, but she couldn't even argue back. She told herself it was because of social hierarchy. No matter how hard she tried, she always ended up in the wrong. With a bitter heart, she threw the food in her hand away and left the house. She thought she had worked hard, but maybe hard work alone wasn't enough to achieve the dream she wanted. Her chest felt heavy with depression. To ease it, she lit a cigarette, the smoke curling up into the sky. But then her alarm buzzed, reminding her of her next job. She started walking toward it, but the sky above was heavy with clouds. Soon, the rain began to fall. At first, she tried to walk faster, but the downpour came rushing all at once. Soaked and desperate, she ran for cover, slipping into a nearby building. Her clothes clung to her skin, her body wet and shivering. She let out a soft, sad laugh, whispering to herself that this day was simply not her lucky day. Her tired eyes wandered, and then stopped. In front of her was a board with bold letters describing the posthumous work of an acclaimed photographer, Unmil. The title read, Muse on Fame. It was a photo exhibition. She didn't know why, but her steps began to follow the signs leading towards the exhibition hall. Something inside her pulled her forward. When she entered the hall, her breath caught. Projected on the large screen before her were pictures of herself, taken when she was only 20 years old. Her face, her expressions, her youth, everything was captured. And in that moment, she realized she was the muse of an acclaimed artist. Her mind went back to those days when her energy was radiant, shining so brightly as she dreamed of the future. She remembered sitting in the theater room with her colleagues, including Hyunjae. Something about her expression gave her away. She thought she saw someone outside the door. Hyunjae stood up and went to check, but no one was there. She laughed nervously, saying she must have been mistaken, and he simply smiled before they continued with their work. Once back in work mode, Myeong shared her worry about the character she was meant to play. To her, the role felt too negative. She couldn't understand the emotions of the character, and she doubted she could act it well. Sadness weighed on her heart. Hyunjae then asked if she had ever faced setbacks in life that she couldn't overcome. The question shocked her, and her honest reply was that, not really. He explained that was the reason she couldn't relate to the character. She quickly denied it, saying she never meant it that way. She was just afraid she wouldn't perform well. He smiled gently, showing his belief in her, and began to tease her. Soon the others joined in, laughing and teasing until their room was filled with lightness. She laughed along, asking them to stop, and for a moment, everything felt warm and alive. If only she had known back then that even days like that could also come to an end. Now, standing before the photo of her younger self, on the wall, she listened as people around her praised it with admiration. They were in awe of the image, but she could only stand there in silence. She couldn't compare the radiant young woman in the photo to the person she had become. She stood there lost in the thought of how she had changed so much. And then another thought lingered. Who was Eun-mil, the one who had taken these pictures, holding memories she herself had already forgotten? It was towards evening when Myeong arrived at her workplace. The woman scolded her angrily, asking if she truly wanted to work, even after she had already apologized and explained about the rain. Myeong pleaded sincerely, and after much begging, the woman finally allowed her to stay. Grateful, Myeong thanked her, but even while working, her thoughts wandered back to the photos from the exhibition. She wondered quietly if she truly knew who she was anymore. By the time she finished her work, night had already fallen. She returned home and found Hyunjae lying in bed. Moving closer, she told him they needed to talk, but he turned to the other side and simply said he had to leave early the next morning. She remembered his shoot and sat down sadly on the bed. After a moment, she asked him softly if he loved her. He didn't answer. Instead, he only said he needed to sleep. She forced a small okay and flopped onto the bed, and in the silence of her heart, asked herself if she still loved him. Slowly, sleep overtook her. That night she dreamed. In the dream, she and Hyunjae had just started dating. She asked him if he loved her, and without hesitation, he answered yes. She asked him how much, and he replied so much before kissing her hand. He told her she was most beautiful when she smiled. She playfully teased him, asking if that meant she wasn't beautiful when she didn't smile. They both laughed. But the scene shifted. Suddenly, Hyunjae's expression grew serious. He told her she had changed, that she was always moody now, always negative. Her words shocked her, leaving her frozen. He continued saying she was no longer the person she once was and that she wasn't lovable anymore. Her eyes snapped open and morning had already arrived. She stepped out of the room and found Hyunjae getting ready to leave. While adjusting his cap, he apologized for waking her. When he finished, he picked up his bag and was about to head out, but Myeong stopped him, asking if he had to leave at that moment. He answered that it was a long journey ahead. But Myeong's thoughts were elsewhere. She quietly asked if Yana was going to be there. His question caught him off guard, but he simply replied he was going to work, then walked out of the house. She stood staring at the closed door, frustration welling inside. To her, both of them carried hidden feelings, and she wondered what he was hiding from her. Yet she couldn't bring herself to ask. She feared their relationship might fall apart if she did. Back in the room, she sat on the bed, lost in thought. Maybe she should quit altogether, quit acting, quit the relationship. Just then, her phone buzzed. An email notification appeared on the screen. Assuming it was spam, she opened it without much interest, but the content made her freeze. It was from Metaphor Entertainment. She quickly straightened on the bed, focusing on the words. Reading the message aloud, she gasped. They wanted to meet her. Metaphor Entertainment wasn't just any company. It managed the country's top actors, including Yana Ban.
The photographer, Eun-mil, never interacted directly with his subjects. He wandered through the streets, capturing random moments, then later asked for permission to use the photos in his exhibitions. His work was always in black and white, and his subjects were always shown living lives full of quiet romance. Over time, those who passed by on the streets began hoping to be seen through Eun-mil's lens, wishing to be a part of his captured world. Criticism could have come, but his skill was undeniable, and people respected his artistry. Yet, among all his work, the subject of his first color photograph and his final model was none other than Myeong Yu herself. News about the legendary first colored photograph of Eun-mil's Muse was spreading everywhere. The more people talked about it, the more Myeong Yu felt small and forgotten. She realized how far she had fallen from the bright, radiant energy she once had. The day arrived for her meeting with Metaphors Entertainment. They met at a quiet coffee shop. A warm woman introduced herself first as Ilha, the manager, and then introduced the director, Yoo-han-eun. He nodded slightly at her, but then stared at her so intently that Myeong Yu felt nervous. She bowed her head respectfully, trying to hide her surprise. Ilha smiled warmly and invited them to sit. She said she was honored to meet Myeong Yu and praised her, saying she could become even more amazing in the future. Myeong Yu blushed, quietly thanking her. She asked how they had recognized her so quickly. Ilha explained that it was easy to know her by her presence and the work she had done. Then the conversation shifted to her past work. Ilha mentioned the small role Myeong Yu had played in the movie Vertigo. Myeong Yu was shocked that even that small role was remembered and talked about. Ilha casually set her coffee on the table and moved on to the next question. The next question surprised Myeong Yu. Ilha asked about her relationship with Yoon Mil. She froze, unsure what to say. Nervously, she explained that she didn't know him personally and had never given him permission to use her photos. Ilha stared at her in shock, while director Yoo-han-eun stayed quiet, his face unreadable. Myeong Yu asked them for advice, not knowing what to do. Ilha said firmly that Yoon Mil always asked for permission before showing his photos, and if he hadn't, it was not right. She lightly banged her hand on the table to show how serious it was. But even if Myeong Yu wanted to take down the photos through a lawsuit, it might not go in her favor. Yoon Mil, the photographer, was already dead, leaving no way to demand an apology. The situation felt tense and heavy. Then the manager offered a different perspective. By letting the photos stay, Myeong Yu could get more attention than ever before. The images had a kind of magical pull, and they were now a part of her story. She could choose to ignore them and live a normal life, or embrace them, become a celebrated artist's muse, and rise to fame. The choice was hers. Myeong Yu felt nervous. She admitted she would feel like she was lying, but the manager reassured her to think of it as acting, a role she could play. Rising to her feet, the manager told her to take time, think it over, and give them a call. As they were leaving, Myeong Yu quickly called them back. She had one more question. She wanted to know what had really happened to Yoon Mil, as she had heard he was young. The director replied calmly, saying that his early death meant only one thing: he had taken his own life. Myeong Yu felt flustered and shocked by the answer. Back at home, she researched Yoon Mil's death. Reports said he had died from a heart attack, contradicting what the director had told her. 3 days had passed since her meeting with Metaphors Entertainment, and she still could not make a decision. The uncertainty weighed on her. Frustration and confusion boiled over, and she screamed. She didn't understand why Yoon Mil had taken her photos in the first place. Myeong Yu decided she would tell Yeonjae everything when he returned from his shoot. She unlocked her phone and stared at it quietly. He hadn't called since he left. Realizing how much she missed him, her lips pouted slightly. She must really love him. Then suddenly, his name appeared on the screen, Yeonjae. The call shocked her, and she drew in a deep breath before answering. His voice came gently, apologizing for taking so long to call. She told him it was okay and asked when he would return. He replied that he would be back home the next day. A pause followed, that kind of silence where words seemed too heavy. Then, softly, he told her he missed her. Her cheeks warmed, and when he asked if she missed him too, she admitted she did. He smirked through the line and suggested they eat something good together when he came back. Just as he was about to say more, to tell her he loved her, another voice interrupted. It was Yena Ban. Annoyance surged inside Myeong Yu. On his end, Yena stood before Hyunjae and asked him to go out with him the next day for a drink. She claimed she was having a slump. He placed a cigarette between his lips and told her he thought she was doing fine. But Yena insisted, saying she had almost suffered a panic attack on set and needed his advice. Seeing her tears, he sighed and gave in. He told her he would make time until 7 in the evening. Relief washed over Yena's face, and she smiled. The next day, they sat together in a restaurant. Yena opened her phone and showed Hyunjae a picture of Myeong Yu, the same one used as the Muse in the photo exhibition. He was shocked when he saw it and asked what it was. Yena explained that this was the exhibition everyone was talking about. She mentioned that Myeong Yu looked very beautiful in it and guessed that it must have been taken during her freshman year. She kept speaking, but Hyunjae's mind drifted back, asking himself when had Myeong Yu taken photos like that. Yena noticed his silence. She lifted her glass and finished the drink in one gulp, then set it down with a sharp sound that made him look at her. Leaning closer, Yena's eyes stayed on him as she quietly weighed her next words. She wanted to know if his feelings for Myeong Yu were still the same as they had been in the past.
He was sweating, unsure of what to say. Earlier that day, Myeong was at home, busy arranging everything as she waited for Hyunjae's return. She was full of excitement, especially since their relationship had been at its lowest only a few days earlier. When she looked around and saw how the house sparkled, she felt proud of herself. As she thought about what else needed to be done, she remembered the laundry. She went to it, picked out one of his clothes, and sat on the bed. Bringing it to her face, she breathed in his scent. It made her pause, her heart tightening. Maybe she didn't have to chase after being a celebrated artist's muse. What was the rush for? Her eyes fell on a book resting nearby, titled Unknown. She held it in her hands and it was pulled into a memory. The day Hyunjae gave it to her. They had been sitting together in a garden, the sun soft on their shoulders. She had praised his work, telling him she read the book in one sitting, feeling the character's passion so strongly. He had been embarrassed, but thanked her. She told him she loved his writing and confessed how deeply it moved her. He had been surprised, but then she admitted she wanted to try acting in something like that someday. Smiling, he asked if she wanted to keep the script. Flustered, she waved her hand saying that wasn't what she meant, but he smirked. Then, with a quiet smile, he shared a story. A boy and a girl, both dreamers, who promised each other that the girl would act in his first project. If that dream came true, so would their love. She listened, her heart racing, as he went on. One day, she would be an actress and he would be a director. He had thought about that future, and that was why he wanted her to keep the script, because he had written it for her. Flustered and touched, she took the script into her hands. With determination, she told him that when she became an actress and he became a director, they would make the film together. It was their promise. Looking down, embarrassed, he added softly that when that dream came true, they should also get married. Her heart swelled. She kissed him and told him they didn't have to wait until then. They should be together now. He held her close, his voice steady with emotion, telling her that he would always love her. Back in the present, Myeong held the book tightly against her chest, her thoughts drifting to the past and to the promises that once tied them together. She wondered if they were still the same as before. Later that night, a taxi stopped in front of the building. Hyunjae stepped out with Yena, who was drunk and leaning heavily on him. He tried calling people for help, but no one answered. As someone passed by, he quickly turned his body with Yana, trying not to draw attention, and in that moment he decided he had no choice but to take her home. Standing at the front of the door, he suddenly realized he should have called Myeong. Before he could think further, Yana clung tightly to him, pressing herself close, and in her drunken state, she kissed him. It was then that Myeong appeared. She stood quietly, her face pale and heavy with sadness as she looked at the two of them. She felt three things as she stood there. The first was that she had been holding him back from reaching his full potential. The second was that their love, which she once believed was sealed by a sacred promise, was nothing more than an ordinary relationship. And the last, the most painful of all, was the realization that she had lost to Yuen Bon. Tears filled her eyes as she stared at them, and with a heavy heart, she turned away. Outside, Hyunjae held her and begged her to listen. She asked if they had been drinking, but he could not give her an answer. She smiled bitterly, telling him that while she had been excited, preparing for his return, he was out drinking and kissing another woman. The thought made her feel pathetic. He tried to explain that Yoona was drunk, but she only sighed. He went further, saying they had only been talking about the movie, and that if the project succeeded, he would finally make his directorial debut, and together they could fulfill the promise they once made. But she told him she was tired of hearing about that promise. She asked him why he always placed success above love. Her voice rose with anger as she told him she was no longer the same person she had been back then. She had changed. And now through tears, she told him she no longer believed she could make his dreams come true. At that moment, Hyunjae's mind went back to the restaurant with Yoona. He remembered her asking if he still felt the same for Myeong as before. He had said yes, clinging to the belief that their promise kept their relationship special. But in reality, things were changing. The promise felt harder and harder to keep. Yoona had told him it must have been overwhelming for Myeong as well, and though he had insisted he believed in her. She smirked and told him that if he truly loved Myeong that much, then he should not have been out drinking with her in the first place. He was caught off guard, admitting that he thought she had been in the slump. But she only gave a bitter laugh, saying she was joking all along. She had only wanted to do something, anything, to catch his attention. Back in the present, Yoona sat on the floor, her fingers pressed against her lips. Her eyes were wide and desperate as she whispered over and over again her wish for them to break up. And as her words carried weight, that was exactly what happened. Hyunjae was on his knees, torn apart, while Myeong stood facing away from him, her shoulders trembling. The promise that once tied them together, once cherished as something sacred, had become nothing more than a chain that weighed them down. She could not believe that their love, which she thought unshakable, had ended over something that felt so ordinary, so painfully small. With shaking hands, she pulled out her phone, unlocked it, then threw it on the floor. The screen cracked against the floor as she stepped on it with all the force of her grief. There was nothing special about them anymore, no meaning left in their love. With tears staining her face, she turned and walked away. She had no friends to run to, no family waiting, no place that felt like home. She wandered aimlessly through the night, her footsteps heavy, until she found herself once again in front of the exhibition hall, the very place that displayed her younger self. At that moment, it felt like the only place welcoming her. She felt a sudden rush of gratitude toward Yoon-mil, the photographer who had frozen those fleeting moments of her youth. Overwhelmed, she sank to her knees in front of her picture, sobbing until her voice broke. It was then that she heard a voice behind her, calm yet curious, asking why she was crying in front of such a beautiful photograph. When she looked up through blurred vision, she saw the director of Metaphor Entertainment, Yoo Eun. He stood watching her, his gaze sharp yet oddly kind. She told him she wanted to be famous, to be loved by everyone. He told her that the woman in the photo was the muse of a celebrated artist, and that meant she already carried something rare, something extraordinary. If she wished for fame and love, then surely it was possible. Her dream could come true. He stretched his hand toward her. Trembling, she reached out and took it. And from that single moment, her life shifted. Everything that came after would be different. A few days later, she sat in front of an interviewer, cameras pointed at her, the lights almost blinding. The question came: how did she feel about being the muse of a celebrated artist? She forced a gentle smile and said she felt sad, because her friend's death was the reason for all of this. The word friend made the interviewer curious. Since Eun-mil had always kept his life private, she was asked what her true relationship with him had been. She lowered her eyes, fidgeting with her fingers, and answered that they had been artistic partners who inspired one another. He would take her photos, and she loved them because she believed the images looked more beautiful than she did in real life. She added softly that she was simply a big fan of his work. The interviewer pressed further, noting that many people believed they had been lovers. Still smiling, she said it was nothing more than a platonic relationship. Her face carried warmth, but deep inside, her stomach twisted. Every word felt false. Every smile rehearsed. She had to remind herself over and over, this was only acting. Her mind drifted back to the moment before the interview when the manager had called her into the office. The manager's smile was firm, but calculated, as she told her a prepared background story. In it, she was Eun-mil's muse, the two of them bound by the pure pursuit of art rather than any thirst for popularity. The focus, the manager said, must be on the art itself, not on her private life. She was given a script with carefully crafted lines to follow for the interview. As she skimmed the pages, her chest grew heavy. Everything on those sheets was made up, lies. She feared being caught, feared the truth slipping through, but the manager leaned closer and told her that since Eun-mil was gone, his private life had been buried with him. What mattered now was the image of his art, not his secrets. She had protested at first, saying it was wrong, but the manager's words were sharp and unforgettable. This was acting, she had said. An actor doesn't only perform on stage or in front of a camera, they act in every moment outside their private lives. And, she added coldly, everyone was acting in daily life, even her, even Myeong. She returned from her thoughts when the interviewer asked the final question. It was about the kind of actor she wanted to become. Since it was not written in the script, she had to speak from her heart. Yet what came out from her lips was still not the truth. She said she wanted to be a pure actor, someone faithful to every role. After the interview, she stood before the manager, who was staring at one of her photos. The manager said the photos seemed to tell their own stories. She wondered if it was because of Myeong's natural charm or her skill in acting. Myeong thanked her quietly. The manager then told her she had already chosen a role for her in a new drama. Myeong was surprised because she had not auditioned, but the manager explained that it was already settled. She thought it seemed too easy. The manager noticed the look on her face and thought she was unhappy, but Myeong quickly showed gratitude. The manager smiled warmly and told her that from that moment on, director Eun would be the one in charge of her work. Myeong nodded in agreement. The manager then added that the script for her first drama would be sent to her. Later that afternoon, a car sped down the road. Inside, a man was staring at Myeong's Muse pictures on his phone, scrolling through them one after another. He seemed deeply impressed, unable to take his eyes off the images. He asked the person driving if he had seen the pictures. The man said yes, and that she would be working with him on his upcoming drama. At those words, he smirked to himself. It had been a long time since he last saw Myeong. At the house, a cup of coffee was placed gently on the table. Myeong thanked him politely with a smile, admitting that she hadn't expected the accommodation to be so nice. Director Eun told her that she was now one of their actors, and because of that, they had to do their best to take care of her. He handed her this script for the upcoming drama, and she slowly flipped through the pages. As she skimmed, he explained that the story was a romance between an ordinary woman and a wealthy man. Her role will be that of the man's first love. It wasn't the main role, he said, but if performed well, it could shine just as much, maybe even more, than the lead. Feeling a wave of pressure, she scratched her head nervously and promised that she would do her best. Still, her heart was already heavy with the responsibility. She then asked if the other roles had already been cast. Director Eun nodded. One of them, he said, was Lily, a well-known idol. She would be playing the female lead. Myeong was startled at the news, but Director Eun explained that Lily had been strongly insisted on for her global appeal, and to everyone's surprise, she had performed well at the audition. Then, he mentioned the male lead. It would be a Hae-do Kang, an actor from Metaphor. At the sound of his name, Myeong froze in surprise. Director Eun gave a knowing look, certain that she was already well acquainted with him. Back at her former house, Hyun-ja sat slumped in a chair, his face heavy with exhaustion. Empty bottles were scattered across the floor, the air thick with the smell of alcohol. He raised one last bottle to his lips, gulping it down, when the sharp sound of the doorbell rang. Dragging himself up, he opened the door, and there stood Yena Ban. She caught the expression on his face and gave a sad smile, saying she felt disappointed, then quietly asked if she could come inside. When she stepped in, her eyes immediately fell on the clutter of bottles lying everywhere. She asked him softly if he was still angry with her, but instead of answering, he asked him what she wanted. She said she was sorry, her voice small, and then asked if his breakup with Myeong was because of her. He sighed in frustration, his voice rough, asking what she was really doing there. She fidgeted nervously with her fingers and said she was worried about him. For her, it felt like everything was her fault, that she had been the cause of their separation. But he told her firmly it wasn't her fault, reminding her that she had been drunk that night. Before he could say more, she suddenly ran to him, wrapping her arms around him from behind. Her voice broke as she asked why he was pretending not to know that what happened that night wasn't an accident. Hyun-ja pushed her off him and told her coldly that he saw her only as an actor. His words stung, and she replied sadly that perhaps she was the only one who thought differently after her debut. He sighed deeply, frustrated, and told her that she needed to learn to separate movies from real life. When he turned to walk away, she stopped him, trying to confirm if he still had feelings for Myeong. The silence on his face gave her the answer she already feared. Without another word, she turned to leave. But just as she reached the door, she paused. Her voice was calm, but sharp, when she asked him if he knew who Myeong would be acting alongside. Without waiting for him to answer, she told him it was Hae-do Kang. He looked at her, surprised. Then she left him with one last question. Would Myeong be able to separate her role from herself? At the theater room, Hae-do Kang's eyes never left Myeong. His stare was so intense that it was hard to notice, but she kept her composure. She only gave him a casual greeting before the practice section began, showing no sign of discomfort. When practice ended and they stepped outside, Myeong was speaking with director Eun. Suddenly, Hae-do Kang rushed up behind her and hugged her tightly with excitement. He spun her around as if nothing had changed between them, happily saying how glad he was to see her again and how little she had changed. His energy overwhelmed her, his actions far too close, until director Eun stepped forward and pulled him away, firmly telling him that he was making her uncomfortable. Hae-do Kang quickly apologized, explaining that he was only overjoyed to meet her again. Still smiling, he added that they should have dinner sometime. With that, he waved cheerfully and left. Myeong turned to director Eun, thanking him for stepping in. If he hadn't, she admitted, she might have lost her temper and cursed at Hae-do there and then. Director Eun gave her a questioning look, asking what her relationship with Hae-do had been, since it didn't seem like they were just college friends. Myeong lowered her head and quietly answered, they had dated briefly. At the time, when she was 20, she thought it was love. The memory weighed heavily on her, and she stayed silent for a while, her head still bowed. Back then, she had been standing behind a cafe, leaning against the wall with a cigarette between her fingers. The smoke curled lazily into the air until, all of a sudden, it was pulled away from her hand. Startled, she looked up and saw Hae-do Kang. Without hesitation, he asked her if she had heard the rumors that the two of them were supposedly a thing. The question caught her off guard. She blinked in surprise and simply asked for her cigarette back, but instead of returning it, he let out a sharp belch of irritation and demanded why she smoked something like that. He waved off the rumors, telling her they were nothing but idle talk and that she should ignore them. But then, with a grin, He added that out of all his colleagues, she was the one he liked best. She frowned slightly at his words, unsure whether it was meant as a compliment. He assured her it was, and without missing a beat, asked if she actually wanted to give it a try. According to him, it would be perfect if the two hottest people in the department started dating. His voice rose playfully as he practically shouted, asking her to go out with him. She scratched her neck nervously, flustered by his boldness, and muttered that she didn't think dating him would be much fun. But Hae-do only smirked at her response, his confidence unshaken. He told her plainly that he already knew he liked her. Her heart skipped. She let out a startled scream, overwhelmed as he stepped closer, his face leaning in like he was about to kiss her. Embarrassed and unsure of what to do, she closed her eyes tightly, bracing herself. But instead of a kiss, she felt his breath by her ear as he whispered softly that he had a crush on her too. Her cheeks burned red. That moment, confusing and thrilling all at once, left her flushed and dizzy. Back then, she had convinced herself that what she felt was love. Back at home, she sat with the script in her hands, reading her lines aloud. Each word felt heavy on her tongue. The more she read, the more her chest tightened. She couldn't believe she would have to stand in front of Hae-do and say all of those things, even if it was only acting. To her, the role felt impossible to act out. Or maybe she simply didn't want to. Frustration built inside her until it finally burst out in a sharp scream. She didn't want to see Hae-do again, not on set, not anywhere. But then, as the sound of her own voice faded, she remembered Hyun-jae. His calm reassurance came back to her, the way he had once told her that she didn't need to worry about people confusing her character with her real self. Acting was just acting, and she was still herself. The memory stung. She realized that every time she practiced, his voice was always there, echoing through her lines. They had always read scripts together. Had she depended on him too much? She lit a cigarette and stepped out onto the balcony. The night air clung to her skin as she exhaled smoke into the dark. She had thought that by leaving everything behind, she would transform into someone entirely new. But standing there, she wondered if she was simply trapped in herself, unable to escape no matter how far she went. Unlocking her phone, her eyes fell on a picture of Yenna Bon. Her fingers hovered over the screen, lifting it slightly into the air as she stared at it. Could she ever reach that level? Could she really stand where Yenna stood as someone admired, recognized, and envied? The next day, Lily recorded a video for her fans. She spoke brightly, telling them how happy she was to be acting with her senbei Hae-do Kang. She admitted that at first she almost felt nervous when she saw him, but she was determined to become friends with him. She also mentioned meeting the artist's muse, senbei Myeong, and described her as so beautiful that she couldn't glance at her. Still, she confessed that she was worried about her own performance, but she promised that she would work hard and do well. When it came time for the shoot, Lily struggled. She kept making mistakes, her lines and actions falling short. Eventually, the person in charge called for a break. Lily lowered her head, apologizing softly to no one in particular, ashamed of herself. Deep inside, she thought someone like her wasn't meant to be an actress. Then, she felt a light tap on her shoulder. Looking up, she saw Hae-do Kang. Startled, she bowed deeply, apologizing louder this time, but he calmly reassured her. He told her she was doing fine and that he believed she would do better the next time they filmed. His words carried weight, and when she met his eyes, she saw he truly meant them. Her heart warmed, and she bowed again, whispering her thanks. Just then, he stretched out his hand toward her, holding out a sweet. With an easy smile, he told her to relax and take a proper break. She accepted the sweet shyly, watching as he turned to walk away. She called after him, wishing him an enjoyable break as well. Lily sat back down, her eyes fixed on the small sweet resting in her hand. Then she glanced at his retreating figure, and her lips curved into a soft smile. Without realizing it, her heart had been stolen. At another corner of the shooting area, Myeong stood with director Eun going over a few things, when a voice suddenly called her name. She turned, and there was Kang, holding out a cup of coffee toward her, urging her to drink something warm. She accepted it politely, murmuring her thanks, but her eyes lingered on the cup instead of drinking, while he calmly sipped from his own. Then, out of nowhere, he asked if she remembered their first kiss. The words stunned her, and she looked at him sharply, wondering why he would bring that up so suddenly. Director Eun, sensing the shift in the air, excused himself quietly, bowing to Myeong before leaving them alone. Hae-do stepped closer and casually asked if she was still smoking. Before he could continue, Myeong cut him off. She told him that their breakup hadn't been the kind that left room for casual conversations like this. For a moment, he grew thoughtful, then asked what she thought they should do. After all, the drama required them to kiss. He had already heard it from the writer. His gaze softened as he admitted that if his actions in the past had hurt her, he was truly sorry. He even bowed his head. She hadn't expected that. She told him that if his apology was only for the sake of the drama, then he didn't need to bother. But he shook his head gently and said it wasn't because of that. He simply wanted to be on friendly terms with her now, like fellow actors. Her eyes searched his face, and in that moment, she saw it clearly. He carried no feelings for her anymore. It struck her that maybe she had been the only one still tied to the past. Flustered, she told him it was fine, that, like he said, everything was in the past. He smiled, pulled her into a sudden embrace, and said they should greet each other warmly next time they met. She stiffened, telling him to let go. He quickly apologized, releasing her, but she could tell the reason for his apology. He wasn't sorry for the past. He only worried she might not be able to focus on her acting. As he waved and walked away, she stood there realizing how hard it was to truly read his thoughts. The only thing clear about him was his seriousness toward acting. A wave of embarrassment washed over her as she remembered her own complaints at home, how tough she thought she had acted against him. She felt foolish for it. Just then, a cheerful voice greeted her. It was Lily. Startled, Myeong quickly answered. Lily smiled and handed her a coffee drink, which Myeong accepted with a quiet thanks. But Lily wasn't done. Her smile grew as she asked Myeong to join her for lunch right then and there. Myeong blinked in surprise at the sudden gesture, but Lily's bright expression only deepened. She followed Lily, who walked ahead with light steps, chatting happily as though they had been friends for a long time. She handed her a small wrap of food, saying that next time they should go to a restaurant together. Myeong thanked her politely, but Lily only laughed and told her not to be so formal. She said she had always wanted to be Myeong's friend. Myeong looked at her with some doubt, but Lily's smile never wavered. She told her how much she enjoyed the movie Myeong had starred in, admitting that she instantly became a fan after watching it. Myeong felt embarrassed at the compliment. Her role in the movie had been so short, hardly anything worth admiring. She wondered if Lily was exaggerating or if she was just being too cautious in believing her. But Lily's expression was sincere. She told her that even though the role was small, the way she acted in that moment had felt real, as if she wasn't acting. Myeong hadn't expected such words. She went on to say that Myeong's performance helped her in her own acting and that it was truly an honor to perform alongside her. Then she reached out and grabbed Myeong's hand, pleading softly for her to speak casually with her. The warmth of her delicate hands surprised Myeong, making her pause. It was a gentle warmth that made her chest loosen, and for the first time, a genuine smile spread on her face. She thanked Lily and agreed to do as she wished. Lily grinned widely and told her to call her by her real name, Lisu, Lee. With a playful tug, Lily urged her to come sit with her. Myeong followed, though her thoughts felt heavy. She finally understood why people adored both Lily and Kang. They were natural, sincere, and professional, shining in their own ways. compared to them, she felt so distant, as though she was standing far behind, struggling to catch up. As they settled down, Lily suddenly turned back, her tone shifting slightly. She said she had seen Myeong earlier with Haidil Kang. With an innocent curiosity, she remarked that they seemed close, then asked what kind of relationship they had.
In her head, Myeong answered Lily's question, "We used to date." But she quickly brushed the thought away. There was no need to be so honest with her. Out loud, she simply said that she and Haidil Kang were just friends from college. Lily's face lit up with excitement. To her, it sounded so cool. But then she lowered her head slightly. She hadn't gone to college, and there was a trace of envy in her expression. Myeong caught it and gave her a small smile, telling her that even knowing someone from school could sometimes be difficult. Still curious, Lily leaned closer. She said that Myeong and Haido looked really close, then suddenly asked if they were dating. Before Myeong could reply, Lily gasped and quickly apologized, her eyes wide. Myeong only laughed gently and assured her they weren't. That answer made Lily's whole face brighten with a wide, relieved smile. But then Lily's smile shifted when Myeong told her that Haido wouldn't make a good boyfriend. Lily's cheeks blushed pink, almost shyly, that to her he was still super sweet. Myeong watched her reaction closely. The thought formed in her mind, and before she could stop herself, she asked if Lily liked him. Lily's eyes widened in shock, and she quickly glanced around as though someone might overhear. Then she leaned closer and whispered, making Myeong promise not to tell anyone. After a hesitant pause, she admitted that, yes, she liked him. The honesty and innocence of the confession made Myeong think she looked cute. With a little smile, she asked her how old she was. Lily proudly replied that she was 20. Myeong chuckled softly and teased her, saying that Haido must look like a middle-aged man to her. Lily shook her head quickly, insisting it wasn't like that, then suddenly gasped and asked what Myeong meant by her earlier words. "Is he a player?" she asked, almost afraid of the answer. Myeong shook her head, telling her no. In her heart, though, she spoke the truth she didn't share. Haido didn't know how to love anyone except himself. Lily, still smiling, said she didn't mind, as long as he wasn't a cheater. Her eyes sparkled with a kind of youthful hopefulness. Watching her, Myeong wondered quietly if she herself had once been like that at 20, so innocent, so full of belief. With a faint smile, she told Lily that talking with her made her feel like she was back in her school days. Lily beamed at that, then asked her directly if she had a boyfriend. Myeong shook her head, saying she didn't. Lily responded with certainty that she would have one soon. Myeong couldn't help but smile and thank her. To her, Lily was truly full of life, bright, warm, and unguarded in a way that made Myeong both fond and wistful. Later that night, Haido sat in the back of his car, his expression unreadable as the city lights passed by. He leaned back, his voice low but firm as he told the driver to head for the practice room instead of home. The driver, surprised, asked if he didn't want to go back to watch the first episode of the drama. Haido's response was sharp, almost cold. He said he didn't care about the drama. His irritation spilled into words about Lily, her poor acting gnawing at him. The driver, a quiet fan of Lily, tried to defend her gently. He reminded Haido that at least he still had Myeong on set. At the mention of her name, Haido's lips curved to a faint smirk. He muttered under his breath that she was still the same as always, still unable to lie. The driver asked what he meant, but Haido only smiled vaguely. That same night, outside Myeong's apartment, a car slowed to a stop. Inside, Director Eun noticed her asleep. Her face softened in slumber. He stayed there for a quiet moment, simply watching her. Then, carefully, he leaned forward and placed his jacket over her shoulders. When her eyes finally fluttered open, she startled at the sight of him so close. She let out a small scream, scolding him for not waking her up instead. Calmly, he explained that he had only just covered her with his coat. Looking down, she realized it really was his jacket. She thanked him softly, stepping out of the car into the night air. She walked a few paces ahead before pausing. Something in her chest tugged at her, and she turned back to look at him. After a moment of hesitation, she invited him inside, asking if he wanted to watch the first episode of the drama with her. Inside her apartment, she offered her thanks again. Her voice carried a quiet vulnerability as she admitted that she didn't want to be alone that evening. This was supposed to be the highlight of her life, she explained, and she needed someone to share it with. She smiled as she spoke, but her smile faltered as she apologized for dampening the mood. Director Eun only stared at her, his gaze steady. Then, with words that settled gently into the silence, he told her that she could call on him anytime. His voice was calm but certain. If she ever needed a shoulder to lean on, he would always be by her side. And that's where we'll pause for today. If you're dying to see what happens next, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Beneath the Story, and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. You can also leave a super thanks to help support this channel, so we can continue to bring you our unique recap from the best manhwa. Bye for now, and see you in the next video.